Well, welcome to Don Odell's Legends. I'm Holly Harris, and I'm speaking with Mr. Sean Chambers. So happy to speak with you. I know you're just coming down from the Timeout Pub, and Paul Benjamin just does such a great job. They just finished up the wonderful North Atlantic Blues Festival.
Yeah, he does do a great job. I heard the festival went great. Yeah, we played the Timeout Pub last night. We actually started our tour a couple weeks ago in Indianapolis, Indiana, and went on to Illinois, and then we had a date in New York and Ohio, worked our way up to Maine. Had 4 shows in Maine, actually, and they went really well. And so then we're here at the Don Odell show tonight, and tomorrow night we're in, actually Thursday night, we're in Magnolia, Delaware, over at Jonathan's Landing for the Central Delaware Blues Society, which is always a great time.
You're going to have a great time, and you hit Maine and some four of the best days of the year.
Yeah, it's kind of become a tradition because my drummer's from Lincoln, Maine.
Okay.
And so it's kind of become a tradition. We've been going up there for the last 4 or 5 years now, every July, and doing, adding a couple dates along the way. And so the tour has been kind of building, and the crowds are always great, and we have a lot of fun. Everybody treats us great. It's just I love the state of Maine. It's a wonderful place.
Maine is great, especially in the summer, and the Maine folks are really good. Did you have lobster? You lobster fans?
Oh yeah. Matter of fact, I took my wife yesterday to a place called the Brass Compass, which is right across the street from the Timeout Pub.
Fun.
And she had her first lobster roll. So.
Oh, she had her first one?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And we always get our share of lobster when we go up to Maine.
Well, Maine is the place. Maine is definitely a place. I'm just so excited to talk to you, and I want to talk about you personally. You're originally from North Fort Myers, is that right?
Originally, I was born on the east coast of Florida in Melbourne.
Okay.
When I was about 7 years old, I moved over to Tampa, Florida, with my folks, and was raised in Tampa and lived there pretty much my whole life.
Oh, really?
And then I met my wife a few years ago, and about a year after her and I met, I relocated to Fort Myers.
I'm a huge fan of Florida.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I've been spending the past 4 years in Tampa, St. Pete. My daughter just graduated from USF.
Nice.
It's really nice.
Nice.
And she's a blues person. She wants to do some band booking. So she took me to the Green Iguana and Skippers.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to, the Katiki, and I went to the Ringside. So I've been hanging out there.
Those are three of the premier places,
So
definitely.
I'm really into it.
Great.
I spent a few times this winter there, so I was very excited to speak with you.
And you mentioned Treasure Island and stuff, so yeah,
Love it.
My dad used to have a condo there too.
Well, I happened to walk I went with some local friends. I walked into the Katiki, and T.C. Carr has a jam there, and I know Betty Fox kind of co-hosts that the other week, and Damon Fowler was there. I'm like,
oh yeah,
this is great. And I went to the Tampa Bay Blues Fest this year.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So I am into it.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Good.
Tell me about yourself, because certainly Britain's magazine named you one of the 50 best guitar players of all time, and I was really, when I found out I was interviewing you, I just really, more than just listened, I really focused. Who are some of your influences, greatest influences, musical or otherwise?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, I was listening to a lot of the popular music of the day, Leonard Skinner and Boston and Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. One day, a buddy of mine picked me up in his green Pinto when he got his driver's license. I think he was 16, I was 15. Yeah. And he put in a cassette tape of Jimi Hendrix, so I had no idea who Jimi Hendrix was. And the song was Red House.
Oh.
And when I heard Jimmy play that song and the emotion of it, it's the first time I ever got chill bumps from listening to music. And I had started playing guitar when I was 11, so for a few years prior to that, I was learning power chords and just kind of playing along with stuff, but it wasn't really what I was looking for, if that makes sense. And when I heard Jimmy play Red House, I said, man, what is that? Who is that? And that's what I want to do right there, or at least try to do. And so then from there, I started learning, a lot of his blues influences, and I started discovering a lot of the Texas blues players like, Billy Gibbons and Albert Collins and Freddie King and Johnny Winter, Stevie Ray, the list just goes on and on. And then I started discovering a lot of their influences like Muddy Waters and B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf and Lightning Hopkins.
Wow.
Again, the list goes on and on. So I really was, I have a part of me that likes the more rock side of the blues and stuff, but I also really love the traditional side of the blues too. So I think when I play, it's a little bit of a melting pot of all that stuff combined. But, I loved Howlin' Wolf, I loved Muddy Waters, all those guys, and I was lucky enough in the beginning of my career to play guitar for Hubert Sumlin, and Hubert was Howlin' Wolf's guitar player for 25 some years. And I did my first show with Hubert in 1998 on Beale Street in Memphis at the Black Diamond for Memphis in May.
Oh.
And then after that, we had a great time, and it was just a magical thing for me. And he said, man, I want you guys to be my band. I want you to be my group. So we were with him for 4 years. He took us all around the world. My band would open the show for him, and then my band we'd take a break, and then we'd come and back him up for like 30 minutes. So we were his band too.
That's great.
And the article you had mentioned in Guitarist magazine, I got when I was playing with Hubert, because I guess the guy, Dominic Pedler was his name, who wrote that for Guitarist magazine. He was in the audience and saw us open the show, and then we got that write-up. I got the write-up, which was great.
And Who's Muddy Shoes? Were you on that one with Hubert?
Which one?
Who's Muddy Shoes? Or
What About Them Shoes?
What About
Yeah,
Them
I was
Shoes?
on
Yeah,
that
What
album.
About
I
Them
played
Shoes?
two
Yeah,
songs.
sorry.
Yeah, same thing and Evil
yeah,
on that.
and I'll tell you, you're right. When I listen to you, I do hear some of the Kings, the Albert B.B. Freddie. But like, I was just thinking of your the CD before here.
Rock House Sessions?
Oh no, this one.
Live from the Long Island Blues
Live,
Warehouse.
I love this one. And you do a Full Moon on Main Street. You also do an Elmore James on here, so I can hear the mix.
Yeah, there's a little bit. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a melting pot that comes through when I
melting
play. Yeah, because
it's great. I mean, there's so many. You have a lot of influences. Did you go to college for music?
No.
Okay.
My college for music, I always say that my time with Hubert Sumlin and going on the road with him was kind of my college musical,
It was 4
college
years.
education.
It was the same time as the college education.
Yeah, so that was kind of my education in blues.
Hubert was amazing. He was
Absolutely.
a kind guy, and I saw him several times and know a lot of people. I've seen him. I saw him at Antone's in Texas, and I saw him in Boston. Any funny stories from the road about Hubert?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a ton. I mean, one of my favorite, Hubert was, if you knew Hubert, he's the best storyteller, and he had all kinds of stories. One of my favorite Hubert stories is about Jimi Hendrix. And Hubert and Wolf had a kind of a father-son relationship. And Hubert would say, man, Wolf would fire me, then he'd hire me. He'd go, you're fired, and he'd call me the next day, you're hired, because he needed back to play. And he'd try to get him to play without a pick and play with his fingers, and stuff. When you learn how to play without a pick, come back. But so he was used to being fired and hired, And one night they were in England playing a show. It was probably around 66. It was in the 60s, 67, something like that. And he said, man, the place was packed, full of smoke, 300 people packed up to the stage. Wolf was up there doing his thing. And he said, in walked this guy with an afro and a bandana and all this tie-dye stuff. And he said, at the time, we didn't know who Jimi Hendrix was, And he said Wolf never let anybody play his guitar. He wasn't the kind of guy that would let people come up and jam.
Absolutely.
But he said Wolf knew he was somebody, but he didn't know who he was. So he took off his guitar, because Jimmy walked right to the front of the stage, and gave it to Jimmy. And Hubert said Jimmy came up, started playing with his teeth, playing behind his back.
Wow.
He said, you wouldn't believe it. And he goes, the first thing that went through my head is, I go, what? He goes, you're fired. He said, Wolf's going to hire Jimmy.
That's a great
just
story.
stuff like that makes you laugh.
Makes you
There's
laugh.
a lot of stories. I miss that guy.
But that's a really good one.
It is, yeah.
He was a real dear. He was a
was.
real dear.
He was.
And tell me about your guitars. I know you play some special guitars.
I'm one of those guys that kind of, when I find something that works, I kind of stick to it. I don't have a huge guitar collection. I've got I primarily play Fender Stratocasters. I've got a couple Strats I use. I've got a Les Paul that I use for some slide work and some slide stuff, and a National Steel guitar. I mean, those 4 guitars are pretty much my arsenal, of
That's
my,
what we're going to hear
my
tonight.
go-tos. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Tell me about your band and who's traveling with you now, and who did I just see out there that we're going to hear tonight?
Sure. My drummer for the last 13 years, Paul Broderick. And he's the fella I told you is from Lincoln, Maine, that we go up there every year. And I got a new bass player. His name's Todd Cook from Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
And he's a great guy, great bass player, and the band is really tight and sounding better than ever.
Oh, I can't wait to hear them in person. This is like real exciting. I want to ask about a couple of CDs, but I want to go back for a moment to the live one.
Sure.
This is a wonderful CD. It really is. The Sean Chambers Band.
Thank you.
And it's just very beautiful. Was this the one you used a lot of the studio musicians, or is this the studio?
Rock House Sessions, my last one. The one
right.
we did after that was
All
one.
right. So let me talk about this one for a bit.
Okay.
You recorded this where?
That was recorded at the Long Island Blues Warehouse, which actually it was recorded at a studio in Deer Park, Long Island. I forget the name of the studio.
Okay.
But it was for the radio show. It was pre-recorded for the Long Island Blues Warehouse radio show. Okay. So we went in the studio, and they said, we're going to have you all mic'd up, and it's going to be a studio sound. And what they do, the format is they ask you a few questions, you play a song, they ask you some more questions, you play a song. The whole thing's about 2 hours, and then they take they take all that and use it for the radio show. So my manager, Jeff, and I at the time thought, well, this might be an opportunity, especially since it's in a studio, to maybe get, you know, a live recording out of it.
Yeah.
You know, so what we did is we invited like 45 or 50 people from the Blues Society in the area for a small, just so we could get some people in there and have some energy going.
Yeah, sure.
Set up some room mics. Already had mics on all the instruments for the show and the drums. So after everything was recorded, we put all the music all on a hard drive, took it back to Florida. When we got off the road, we went in our own studio and mixed everything down and got a record out of it.
I love it. Well, it's very, very special. It really is special.
Well, thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. Nice. I know you wrote most of the tunes on here except a few. And that led me to think, what is your writing style? Does it come easy? Are you a prolific writer, or do you have to sit down and be very disciplined?
Writing has never been the easiest thing for me. That's one of the things I really have to work on. You know, I know guys that have a notebook full of a couple hundred songs. I was never like that.
Okay.
I got to sit down and try to write. Sometimes if I'm inspired, I may write 2 songs a day, but then it may be 2 months before I write another song, you know, and sometimes I'll think of a vocal line, write it down, you know, maybe a melody going through my head, and I can put some music to it.
Do you sleep with a notebook, or do you put it in your phone?
Not really.
It's just happy, you just remember it.
Yeah, I might just record it on my phone or something, or jot some words down.
Call your wife, remember this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or I may come up with a guitar riff or something and then have to try to put a melody, you know, a vocal line around that.
Okay. You know, like, because this one, you know, the announcer from the radio show starts out, you know, you are a wild, live, wonderful show, and I like how you started out because it is wild.
Yeah.
You know, the first one's an instrumental on this particular cut, and I really love it. I loved Full Moon on Main Street playing that, and Elmore James Jr. I'm friends with his son.
Really?
Out of Chicago. Yes.
Wow.
And he'd be very happy. I don't know if he knows your music. He might, but he would probably be honored to hear this song.
That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that.
Yeah.